Hey, you guys, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Listen, I am super excited to be here. I want to talk to you um, about today grants and what you should be doing within your organization and how to position yourself for grants. But before we get into that, I want to welcome everyone that is watching on my YouTube channel. Thank you so very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for commenting. I really appreciate it. For those of you that are listening on my podcast, which we have renamed Fundable by Design, Fundable by Design. Your organizations are designed to generate money. So let us know what you think about the title of our new podcast, Fundable by Design. Where's the money? We would love to hear your feedback. We want to thank you for being a part of this community. We want to thank you for your interest in starting a nonprofit. And we also want to thank you for your commenting, for your shares, for your downloading. It really does help us move forward with increasing our awareness of the podcast. So I hope that you enjoy our continuation of sharing information and give us a comment about what do you think about the new name of the podcast, Fundable by Design. Your organizations, your nonprofit organizations are fundable by design. All right. So we look forward to your feedback. I am Jennifer, your nonprofit expert, over 39 years of experience in this work of helping organizations put together not just systems, not just tools, but really helping you to put together the structure and the system so that your organizations can be funded. All right. Let's dive right into it today. Today, we're going to talk about why grants are not step one and what should be when you are starting your nonprofit organization. I know for many of you, you heard start a nonprofit, you can get a grant. Start a nonprofit, you can get a grant. You know, if you get a grant, then you can generate revenue or have money for your organization. But I want to be clear about why grants are not step one and what should be. All right. I want to talk about the funding sequence that most nonprofit organizations get wrong. All right. Many people think starting your nonprofit, you can get a grant. So the sequence is let me file my paperwork. And when I get my approval, that would then make me eligible or would be able to open the door for grant funding, right? And so that funding sequence that you might assume begins with the paperwork and then the money. This is where many of you are getting it wrong. All right. And this is what is leading to funding or money coming into your organization being one of your biggest challenges. All right. So I want you guys to grab your pens, your papers. I want you all to take notes. And I want you all to reflect. If you all have missed any of my previous podcasts or my previous YouTubes, I invite you to go back, get caught up. You can see a sequence happening. And so you can do this continuation of learning that I hope will help you better understand and not just understand, but to be able to execute. All right. I don't want you to just be a hearer of the word, honey. I want you to be able to do it as well. All right. So let's start with the belief that almost every new nonprofit leader has. All right. That belief is I started a nonprofit, so the next step is grants. This belief is everywhere. Okay. This belief is everywhere. It's on social media, it's a part of word of mouth. It's a part of conversations that you may pick up off of YouTube. And it's well-meaning advice. Let me be clear. So the idea of someone saying, start a nonprofit, you can get a grant, or the thought of once you start a nonprofit, you have access to funding, i.e., grants, right? Or grants go to nonprofit organizations. And so you might think once I become a nonprofit organization, that means I am eligible for grants. And again, this is a very prevalent, popular belief. Okay. And it leads to the same frustration. It leads to the same frustration. Okay. That frustration sounds like Jen, why are grants so hard to get? Jen, why do we keep getting rejected? Right? We've applied for numerous grants and we've not gotten any of them. Jen, why does it feel so impossible to get a grant? Jen, is there a startup grant? Or Jen, I can't do anything. I can't open my program. I can't build my program until I get a grant, right? So it leads to a lot of frustration. And here's the truth that no one explains clearly. All right. Grants are not step one. Grants are a validation step, not a startup step. I'm going to say that again. The assumption or the myth or the idea that starting a nonprofit will give you access to grant funds just by getting your paperwork filed, just by getting your paperwork approved, right? Just by becoming official. I'm a nonprofit, Jen. I have my 501c3, and that paperwork is going to give you access. It's going to open up the door or give you opportunity for grants right away, right? Just by getting the paperwork done. But what I hear from most of you is, well, Jen, why is it so hard to get a grant? Jen, I've applied for many grants, but we've not received any. We've been rejected by all the ones that we received. I got an email this past week where this guy says, Jen, we've been in operation since 2016. We have submitted hundreds of proposals and have not received one. And he says, why does it feel impossible to get the grant? And this is the truth, again, that no one explains. That grants are not your step one when you start your nonprofit organization. It's not step one. Grants are a validation step, not a startup step. Okay? And I want to talk about why people think that grants are step one, right? Why do people think this? Why do people think that if I start a nonprofit, I can get a grant? Why do people think that grants automatically come to nonprofit organizations? Where does that thought come from? All right. Because this idea is perpetuated. And so you're hearing it everywhere, right? So now you started your nonprofit, you filed your paperwork, and now you're trying to take a grant writing class. Now you're trying to find a grant writer. Now you're trying to decide, do I hire a grant writer? You might even decide, I think I want to learn grant writing, right? And this idea of grants being step one, getting grants, access to grants, it's perpetuated. And it is oversimplified advice. Oversimplified advice. Start a nonprofit and apply for grants. That is oversimplified advice. You might hear people say, well, Jen, I got a grant. I got my nonprofit and I got a grant. I got a grant for 10,000. I got a grant for 20,000. I got a grant as soon as I started. But that's outside of some context, some real important context. The context being, how are you going to sustain this thing? Right? The grant funder may have given you 20, 30, 40, $50,000. And when those dollars are gone, how do you intend to continue those resources at that level on an ongoing basis? Context could mean, Were those grants given for a specific designated purpose? And again, once those funds are gone, how are you going to sustain that? So there has to be some context to those organizations that get the grant, because that's not the majority. But those success stories that are perpetuated would make you think, I can get a grant too. I can do the same thing they did. I just want you to remember context, okay? The other thing is that people confuse eligibility with readiness, right? You have to be a nonprofit to be eligible to apply for the grant, right? Eligibility. But that does not mean that you are ready to apply for a grant. And when I mean ready, I mean that you have the things, the information that the grant funder are going to want to see or expect to see before they make the determination or the decision of who's going to get those grant dollars. Grants is the money, okay? What's also perpetuated is the belief that need automatically attracts funding. I'm going to say that one again. That need automatically attracts funding, right? Because many of you are starting your nonprofit organization and you are focused on need. Jen, I'm meeting the need of helping those who are transitioning out of foster care. Jen, I'm meeting the need of helping children who are hungry. Jen, I'm meeting a need of giving food to the homeless. Jen, I'm meeting a need by whatever it is that you're doing, right? So your belief that my need, the need that we are addressing automatically is what's going to attract the funding, the donors, the funders, the supporters, the contributors, the sponsors, those capital issuing authorities, right? But what's missing from those conversations? What's missing from those conversations? What are the things that happen before the grant dollars, right? Before the grant. Let me tell you guys what grants actually are, because I think there's a misunderstanding or maybe there's not clarity of what is a grant. What is a grant? Grants are not startup capital money. Did you hear what I said? Grants are not startup capital. Grants are not intended to give you the money, the capital, to launch or lift your entire organization. That's not what they are. So for those ideas of, Jen, I'm gonna start a nonprofit, Jen, and I can get capital, I can get money, free money that I don't have to pay back, to help me start my organization, help me to launch my organization, help pay all of the expenses of my organization just because I'm a nonprofit. Now, I don't know if this is one of the reasons that people start a nonprofit, because they think that they then have access to money that's going to help them do whatever it is that they want to do. I don't want to get into that. But what I'm telling you, what it is not the capital, the money, the cash that you use to launch or lift or start your nonprofit organization. It's not intended. It is not possible. It is not practical. For those of you guys who know, I've been doing this work for 39 years. 39 years ago, there were not as many nonprofit organizations as there are now, right? And so the number of nonprofit organizations have grown, but the number of foundations, corporations, those grant funding entities has not grown to the pace of the number of nonprofits. So if you can imagine, there is not then enough money to fund all of these organizations in their startup capacity, like give everybody capital. You need $100,000. You need $100,000. You need $30,000. You need $40,000 to start. It's not intended. Grants are not startup capital for the nonprofit business, okay? For the for-profit business either. Grants are risk assessed investments. I'm going to say that again. I want you to be clear of what they are. These are dollars that are going to go to a nonprofit organization after they have been risk assessed. The grant is an investment in your organization. All right. It is not an investment. It is not free money. It is not money that automatically comes to you because you are a not for profit organization. It is a risk assessed investment. Now, those dollars are dollars that would have and could have gone to pay taxes. However, those dollars now are repurposed or given to that tax receiving organization, which is our nonprofit organizations. Okay, so in the foundations, they get their money from their stock, they get their money from their investments, and so a portion of that money, instead of paying taxes, they give to the organization. All right, so that the organization can do the work. However, they are given based on a risk assessment, not on your passion, not what you want to do, not because you started, not because of your idea, not because of what the Lord said. All right. They are a risk assessed investment. The investment is in your organization's capacity, ability, experience in meeting need. All right. They are performance based. Did you hear what I said? They are performance based, which is why the application asks you for the goals, the objectives, your outcomes, your experience, the need for what you do. All right. They are performance based funding. They are accountability driven. Accountability driven, which is why the grant funder wants what? They want a report. They want to know what your goals and objectives are. They want to know how you evaluate your program. So the grant funder assumes that your governance already exists, that your finances are managed responsibly. They assume that your reporting systems are in place. They assume that you have sustainability, right? That's considered. Because if they give you 50, 60, $70,000, they assume that you have the systems, the structures, the process, the plans, the ability, the capacity to keep bringing that money in after their money has gone. Right? As you're spending the grant, they're assuming that you are structured to keep bringing in the money so that there is an ongoing cycle of those funds. After their grant dollars have been spent, that you have the structure, the infrastructure to keep money coming in. So they are assuming that you have a plan, that you have a process for sustainability. Otherwise, what does that look like? They give you the money, you spend the money, and now everything that they've spent has to stop because you don't have any other money coming in. All right. So they assume that you are structured to sustain yourself, that you don't need their money to survive. Am I making sense? So grant dollars are built on trust. And trust is not created by the paperwork, by you having a 501c3, by you doing the paperwork, by you having a website, right? Trust is not created by the paperwork. If that's all you needed was the paperwork, we wouldn't need the application. The grant application goes into great detail. They want information to determine, can they trust your organization with their money? If all you needed was the paperwork to get a grant, then everybody would have a grant if that's all you needed. No, they're looking for other things besides the paperwork, which is why the paperwork alone should not be where you begin. Am I making sense? When you don't understand this, applying for grants too early will backfire. Applying for grants too early will backfire. Jen, I got my 501c3. I don't have a plan. I don't have a system. I don't have a strategy, right? Again, you might get a grant when you first start. You might get that, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 grant. But when you now have to report, when you now have spent that money, there is an expectation that you have other money coming in. They're not designed to support your organization into perpetuity. Okay? Those grant dollars will end. They are termed for 1 year, maybe 2. But if the grant funder changes priority, if they decide that your organization has already been funded enough and they now want to go and fund another organization, that is their prerogative. It is their money. But you are not reliant on those dollars. All right. Let me get back on focus. Grants, applying for grants too early can backfire. Okay. When you treat applying for grants as step one, Jen, I got my nonprofit. I need a grant. Jen, I got my 501c3. I need a grant. Should I hire a grant writer, Jen? Or you start your nonprofit and then you go and learn, take a class, $79.99 to learn how to write grants. Because you might have assumed that grants are going to be your primary source of money coming into the organization. And so you treat grants as step number one. And how does this backfire? The grant application exposes missing structure. The grant application exposes missing structure. And then your rejections start to pile up. And then you begin to internalize those failures. Jen, I've been applying for grants, but we're not getting any. Jen, I'm researching grants, which takes a lot of time. Jen, I've hired grant writers, but we've not been successful. And now you are internalizing that failure. Now desperation replaces strategy. Now you're desperate for money. Jen, we got to get a grant. We got to get a grant because we don't have enough money to operate, right? Now you're looking for grants anywhere and everywhere. You're not even looking at strategy. How are we approaching these funding opportunities? You're just looking for anybody and everybody that's got some money, right? So now desperation has replaced strategy. And now your credibility within the grant funding space has eroded. Your credibility has eroded. They see your applications as not as incomplete. They see your applications as not qualified or prepared. And now your organization's credibility is impacted. Am I making sense? Your foundations, the funders, the donors, the supporters, they don't see new and passionate. That's what you are, right? You are a nonprofit organization. You are new and you are passionate. That's not what they see. They see high risk. They see founder dependent operations. They see you as an organization that's doing everything, that's paying for everything. And if anything happens to you, the organization is gone. They see unclear accountability. They see lack of strategy, lack of structure. They see passion with no plan. They see risk. And once that perception forms, it's hard to undo. It's hard to undo. What should be your step number one? Okay, before grants, before you decide, Jen, I got my 501c3. Um, I need a grant. Jen, is there a grant to start? Many of you who don't understand the nonprofit space, you may be thinking, well, Jen, I'm a nonprofit. How am I supposed to have any money? I need a grant. That's the only way I can do it, right? But before the grants, I want you to put yourself in the funder's shoes, the donors, the supporters, the foundations, those capital issuing authorities. I want you to understand what they see. All right. We understand what you want, but I want you to put yourself in their shoes. What do they expect to see from an organization that they're going to invest in? One, that there is organizational clarity. Organizational clarity. Now, I'm going to say something that may not land well with some of you. For those of you that think, Jen, I have everything. I have a strategy. I have a plan. I have everything. My thing would be if you had everything, then it would be working. If you had everything, it would be working. If you had structure, you are structured to raise money. So if you had the structure in place, you'd be raising money. Organizational clarity means you have a clear mission. Not that you have a mission, but that you know how to accomplish the mission. You know how to accomplish the mission. Not that you have a mission, that you know how to accomplish the mission, right? That you have a clear vision of where you see the organization within the next 2 years, and you know how to reach, achieve, advance that vision, right? Your organizational clarity means that you know what your scope is. You know what your financial scope is. You know what your programmatic outcome scope is. You know what your purpose is. Now, why is this important? If the organization doesn't have clarity, then the donor, the funder, the community doesn't have clarity either. If you can't explain why the mission matters, if you can't explain why this work is needed now, how is your community supposed to approach it as a place of this is urgent. This is something that needs to be addressed right now. This is worth my investment. If there is no organizational clarity with you, then it's not clear to anybody else either. Not even your board, which is why many of them are struggling to raise money. They don't understand the importance of the mission. They may know what the mission is, but are you equipping them, the board members, the volunteers, with being able to understand why the mission matters, how to explain why the mission matters? What's the scope of work and why this scope is intentionally designed to meet a need? Are you preparing them with the clarity by which to be able to explain the importance of the work? If not, that means you're not clear, the community's not clear, no one is clear. And now it's not working, right? Funders want to see clarity. They also want to see governance. They also want to see an active board providing oversight. Now, you all may see board members as a necessary end, but it really is an opportunity. It really is an opportunity to build credibility, to build stewardship, to build trust, right? Having an active board is a good thing. It's a possible thing. It is a part of your structure that shows and shares your community and those that would be investing in your work that you are a good steward. You can be trusted with money. All right. The next thing that they look at, the funder looks at, is your financial systems, right? This is your budgeting, your tracking, the controls by which money is measured. If you're always in a financial crisis, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough money. Jen, we don't have enough money. Jen, funding is my biggest challenge. Jen, I'm funding everything out of my pocket. That's a financial problem. That says that you are operating without being able to plan, to project financially. You're a risk. That means you don't have a fundraising foundation. You don't have a diversification of funding streams, donors. There's no planning. There's no strategy in place. Fundraising is not an added task. It's a part of your organizational structure. Raising funds from the 15 plans or streams or revenue opportunities show that your organization is working at capacity and that you have the plan, the relationships, the development of relationships, the growth of funding potential to sustain the work. If you don't have that, you are a risk, right? They want to see that you've got outcomes and reporting. That means data, documentation, accountability. These things aren't extras. They're not extras. They're not optional. They are prerequisites. I want you to imagine the grant funder is receiving hundreds, if not thousands, of grant applications. I want you to hear me now. The grant funder is receiving hundreds, if not thousands, of grant applications. Everybody's got a great program. Everyone is excited about their program, right? The programs are great. The programs are making a difference. The programs are meeting a need, right? So on that front, everybody is the same. Everybody got a program. Everybody meets the criteria programmatically. So then how do they determine who gets the grant? They start looking at the organization, not just the program. They start looking at the organization that has their financials. They start looking at the organization that has a plan for sustainability. They start looking at the organization that has leadership, that has the governance in place. And those that don't are the ones that are pushed to the side to be rejected. How else could they measure it? How else could they determine who's going to get that money? Everybody's got a program. Everybody's a nonprofit. All those applications are coming from nonprofits. And all of them applications have a great program. So how do they determine who gets the funding? Outside of having a great program, outside of having, passion in leadership, they start looking at the organization. They want to see your financials. They want to see your plan for sustainability. They want to see who's on your board. They want to see your fundraising strategies. They want to see who is working within the organization. They may ask for resumes. Okay. So these things are prerequisites on who gets the grant. It's not just you have a 501c3 or you have your paperwork or you've done your paperwork. Now I can get a grant. I want to tell you the correct funding sequence. Okay. Here's the sequence that most fundable nonprofit organizations follow. Okay. What is a fundable nonprofit? A fundable nonprofit is an organization that the donors, the supporters, the contributors, the sponsors, those that would entrust their money to these organizations. All right. This is what they have done, and you can do the exact same thing. All right. Here is the sequence that they follow. One, they build the organization. Most of you get your 501c3 and then start delivering the program. You get your 501c3 and then you start paying, you know, putting together your program. You start investing in the program's materials, the supplies, the activities of the program. Now that's expense. All that you are doing within that program is an expense. You've got two hats. One hat is the program hat. That is an expense. The other is the organization hat, the administrative entity hat. That hat brings in the money. Most of you don't put that together. You put the program hat together. But those organizations that are fundable, that are trusted by the donors, the funders, the supporters, the contributors, they build the organization first. But many of you are so eager to start the program because the program is your passion. The program is what you are really interested in doing. And you may not even realize that there is a whole administrative entity hat that you got to put together. You may not even know that. I'm telling you, putting together your organization is what makes you attractive to a donor and a funder, not your passion for the program, not the passion for the activities that you do. All right. So most fundable nonprofits do these things in this order. Number one, they build out the organization, the systems, the structures within the organization that is going to generate revenue. Two, they establish their governance, right? They build out the governance and the accounting systems. Those things work together. They provide operational responsibility. If everybody's working on the program and no one is designated, no one is equipped, no one has the experience or the capacity of generating the revenue, of acquiring and cultivating donors, or broadening your reach, your branding, your communications, right? Then there is no operational responsibility to do those things, and they're not getting done. They know how to cultivate relationships. Now, what happens is, again, most of you start your nonprofit organization, you start doing the program. The people that are in your program, because that's your passion, the people that are in your program are not your donors, are not your funders, are not your supporters, are not your contributors. So now you're spending all of your time doing the work that is only an expense. You've got to also understand the process, understand the plan, understand the systems, understand the strategies, have the ability to cultivate the relationships with the people that are not in the organization. That's where your donors, your funders, your supporters, your contributors, your sponsors, those capital issuing authorities, cultivating those relationships. But for many of you, it's like, I don't know what to say, Jen. I don't know where to begin, Jen. I don't have time because you're doing the program. That means what? You're not bringing money into the organization. You're not fundable. You've got to know how to demonstrate outcomes. Once you know those things, those five things, build the organization, establish governance and systems, prove operational responsibility. If you can't prove operational responsibility, then how can you show, clarify to the grant funder that their dollars can be trusted within your organization, right? So you've got to prove operational responsibility. You've got to be able to cultivate relationships, demonstrate outcomes, and then pursue grants. Grant funds don't start organization. Organizations earn grants. Did you hear what I said? Grants don't start organizations. Organizations earn grants. I want to reframe this for many of you, particularly if you've never worked in a nonprofit, you've never run a nonprofit, you've never led a nonprofit, right? If grants have felt frustrating, if you've been trying to get grants and you've not been successful, if you've been discouraged, confused, okay, I want you to know that it's not because you're incapable. It's not because it's out of your reach. It's because you were taught the wrong order. It's because you were given half a story. Yeah. You thought start a nonprofit, you can get a grant. You were taught the wrong order. You don't fix funding money by applying more or chasing deadlines or even hiring a grant writer too early, right? I'm a grant writer. Um, you fix funding by building readiness first. Do you have the things within your organization that the grant funder is going to want to see? They're going to want to know. Because those things that you build within the organization are going to be the determining factors of who gets the grant. So you fix funding by building readiness first. Now, for those of you that started with the program first and now you're stuck, Jen, I started my nonprofit, but we don't have any funding. Jen, I started my nonprofit, but I'm paying for everything out of my pocket. Jen, I started my nonprofit and funding is our biggest issue. Jen, I started my nonprofit and we can't find donors. Jen, I started my nonprofit, but we don't have a fundraising plan. Jen, I started my nonprofit and my board can't help us fundraise. That's because you did not build the readiness to bring in the money, to be structured, to attract, to engage, to inspire. You didn't build that first. You built your program first, and that's an expense. And now you've become desperate. Now you're not strategic. Now you are just reacting, hoping, struggling. Let me say this. You're speaking more about money than you are about why they should trust you with the money. Again, grants are not step one. They are step 6. Put step 6 in the chat. I know you all are rushing. Y'all are rushing to get this program off the ground. You are rushing because this is your passion. You are rushing because this is what you want to do, is do that program. But the truth is this, that if you do this out of sequence, you'll start and then you'll get stuck. You'll start and then you'll have to stop. You'll start and then you're going to be searching for funding. And that's going to be because you started out of sequence. When you pursued the right sequence, applications make sense. The questions that they ask feel familiar. You're able to answer. Confidence is going to replace confusion. And funding becomes possible. when you do it in the right sequence. Now, if y'all are gifted and anointed, honey, with skipping steps, not because you did it on purpose, you just probably didn't know, particularly for those of you that have been doing this on your own, right? You and Cousin Chat, you, Cousin Chat, Uncle Google, and them groups over there. If you don't know what you don't know, you're like, I did it the right way, Jen. I got my paperwork. You don't know that that's not the right way. And you're not sure, why then am I struggling? Where's the money? I started my nonprofit. I got my paperwork. Why can't I get funding? Why can't I get donors? Why is it that I'm funding everything out of my pocket? Why is funding my biggest challenge? And that's not how you are designed. That's not how it's supposed to be structured. But if you started it out of order, now you are experiencing what happens when you start it out of order. So if you're still asking, why can't we get grants? I want to invite you to think of a better question. The better question is, have we built what grants require? Because funding doesn't reward urgency. Did you hear what I said? Funding does not reward urgency. It rewards readiness. And readiness is something you can build. It's not optional. You can build it deliberately, strategically, and in order. That's what me and my team do. That is what I've been doing for the last 39 years. Okay, helping organizations put together the plans, the strategies, the systems, the tools, so that your organization is positioned and ready to receive the funds that are available. All right, I hope I've explained this well. I hope that it's clear. And if and when you are ready, say, Jen, we skipped steps. We did things out of sequence. We definitely did not follow the order that you described. I can see now why funding has been so elusive and why we've been operating out of urgency and not strategy. I can see why we've been overlooked by grant opportunities, because we did not have in place the things that they requested in the grant application. That if we were to line our organization up with those that do have the systems, that do have the structures, that do have the processes, we would definitely fall short. And this is your opportunity. All you got to do is put those things in place. That's it. You're not sunk. You're not out of the game. You just now have the opportunity to put the things in place that need to be in place so that the donors, the funders, the supporters can trust you, can partner with you, can see you as a good partner and not just a place that wants to spend money. All right? Money is not your problem. Money is not your problem. Structure or lack thereof is your problem. And when you're ready and you say, Jen, you're telling me things that I've not heard anyone else say, what you say makes sense. The whole picture, not just start and get a grant, but this is why we're not getting the grant. And not just the grant, but the other streams of revenue as well. Grants are one of 15 streams of revenue, that while you're waiting on those grant dollars to be approved and to come into your organization, you have 14 other streams of revenue as well. Are you ready to diversify those funding streams? Are you ready to bring those dollars in? If the answer to that is no, we don't know how. No, Jen, we don't have a plan. No, Jen, we don't have experience. No, Jen, we don't know where to start. Then you are right in the position to say, Jen, I need to be put in that place. I need to really make sure our organization is doing what we are designed to do, which is bring in the revenue to do the work that's going to benefit your community. It starts with structure, not a grant, not the paperwork. All right? If you're ready to have that conversation, if you're ready to say, Jen, structure is missing from our organization. We did not put that together. If you are ready to stop bleeding, missing out on opportunities that probably could come close to $300,000 a year that you are missing out on because you're not structured properly. If you're ready to change that, we can get you up and going within the next 60 days. And now you're ready to raise money. Now you're ready to show to the donor and the funder that you are in position and ready for their dollars. You're able to give them what they need to see in order for them to trust you with their investment. You are no longer too risky. You have positioned yourself to be the place where they can trust with their investment. All right? When you're ready, let's have a conversation. In the meantime, I want to say thank you for listening. Thank you for following. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for being a part of the community. And we're just here to help you be fundable by design. Okay? We want to show you where the money is so that you can continue to do the work to change the lives of the people in your community and to be able to make your community a better place because of the work that you do. I am Jennifer, your nonprofit expert. I'll see you next time.